Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Welcome to Peace of the Divine, the podcast where we dive into the rich and timeless world of Islamic literature.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Whether it is exploring classical works, poetry, or modern interpretation, we are here to uncover the wisdom, beauty, and depth of the written word in Islamic tradition.
So I'm Satria, your guide to the historical and cultural gems of Islamic texts.
And I'm Irshad, bringing you reflections, stories, and discussion on how these words connect to our life today.
So from the profound verses of Rumi and Al-Ghazali to contemporary voices shaping Islamic thought,
We are here to journey through the pages that inspire minds and hearts across generations. So grab a cup of tea, find a cozy spot, and let's explore the words of Islamic literature together.
okay, so tonight's episode is a special episode, Irza. We are diving deep into three subtopics. So the first one is Islamic Golden Age literature,
Okay.
and the second is tradition in Islamic culture, and the third is the role of oral narratives in preserving and transmitting cultural knowledge.
It's a lot to unpack. But trust us, it's going to be an insightful journey. Let's start with the first subtopic, Satya, because I know this is your area of expertise. So please, could you explain what Islamic Golden Age literature is all about?
Okay, sure. So the first one is about the Islamic Golden Age literature. So the Islamic Golden Age spanned from the 8th until to the 13th centuries, and it began during the reign of Abbasid Caliph Harun al-Rashid, who inaugurated the famous House of Wisdom in Baghdad.
The House of Wisdom. It was like
Yeah.
the intellectual hub of the world, wasn't it?
Exactly. Scholars from across the globe came to translate classical knowledge into Arabic and Persian. This era marked a flourishing of art, science, and literature. But unfortunately, it ended with the Mongol invasion and the siege of Baghdad in 1258.
That must have been devastating. But during this era, what role did Islamic teachings play in this intellectual renaissance?
That's a great question, Yusha. The Quran and Hadith emphasize the importance of education and acquiring knowledge. This principle inspired Muslims to explore various disciplines, from medicine to poetry.
Fascinating. And I believe the metaphor of golden age itself emerged later during the 19th century, right?
Yes, it's right. It was popularized in Western literature as part of Orientalism. But for Muslims, this era remains a source of pride and inspiration for how faith and knowledge can coexist beautifully.
Beautifully said. It is incredible to think how these ideas still resonate today. Okay, so let's move to our second subtopic. It's about tradition in Islamic culture. What are some of the key literary and cultural traditions that have shaped Islamic thought?
Well, there are several, but let's focus on just 5 points in here.
Okay.
First is Tilawah Quran, and the second is Hadith and Sunnah.
Okay.
Third is Tafsir.
Yeah.
Fourth, Fiqh, and the last is Qiraat.
Okay. So there is five subtopic.
Yeah.
And then let's start with Tilawah Quran. And what makes it so unique?
So Tilawah isn't just a reading; it's a spiritual practice. It involves reciting the Quran with tartil,
Okay.
clear and measured articulation.
Oh.
It's a way to connect deeply with Allah words while reflecting on their meaning.
And then we have Hadith and Sunnah, which are essential in Islamic teachings.
Yes, that's right. These are records of the Prophet Muhammad's sayings and action,
Okay.
while Sunnah refers to his overall way of life. Both are foundational for understanding the Quran and Islamic law.
Okay. How about tafsir? I've always been curious about how scholars interpret Quranic verses.
Tafsir is fascinating. It's the exegesis of the Quran, providing context, historical background, and linguistic analysis. Some famous works include Tafsir al-Tabari and Tafsir Ibn Kathir.
Okay. And then the next one is about fiqh, right?
Yeah.
Okay, and that's about Islamic jurisprudence. Is it?
Exactly, is that. Fiqh governs everything from daily rituals to social laws.
Okay.
Schools like Hanafi,
Hmm.
Maliki, and Shafi'i
Okay.
codified these laws, offering diverse yet cohesive interpretation.
Ah, okay, I see. And then finally, the last one about Qira'ah. I know this refers to different methods of Quranic recitation.
Yes, and it showcases the linguistic beauty of the Quran. There are 10 recognized qiraat, its root in tradition passed down through generation.
Ah, it's so incredible how this tradition is not only preserved but also celebrate the Quran's richness. Okay, and then the next one. Now onto our final subtopic, the role of oral narrative in preserving and transmitting cultural knowledge. Okay, and then Satria, how did oral tradition shape Islamic literature?
Basically, oral narratives were vital. They preserve history, taught moral, and spread knowledge, especially in societies with low literacy rates.
Okay, like traveling scholars and storytellers who shared wisdom in mosques and courts.
Exactly. And these narratives fostered until by creating a shared cultural identity. For instance, tales like 1001 Nights originate from oral storytelling.
Ah, that's a classic one. And didn't Sufi poets like Rumi also rely on oral traditions?
Yes, their works express deep spiritual ideas in a way that resonated with the masses. Oral narratives also influence written literature, blending the beauty of spoken word with permanence of text. Okay, well, so to wrap up, Islamic literature, whether through golden age text, cultural tradition, or oral narrative, continues to inspire and unite.
Absolutely. It is a testament to the enduring power of knowledge and storytelling in shaping our identities and values.
But with Irzad, when I think about tradition in Islamic culture, one vivid memory always comes to my mind. So, as a child, I often watched my mother reciting the Quran every morning with such devotion and tranquility. No matter how busy her day was or how demanding her schedule, she always made time for tilawah, reading and reflecting on the verses of the Quran. At that time, I was just an observer. I didn't fully understand the depth of what she was doing or why it was so significant.
Wow, that's such an inspiring image. How did it make you feel back then, seeing her so immersed in the recitation?
As a child, my understanding of it was very limited. I saw it as something she did every day, like a habit.
Hmm.
I admire her consistency, but don't really grasp the meaning behind it.
Okay.
However, as I grew older, I began to notice something profound. Whenever she recited the Quran, there was this unique calmness that filled the entire house. It wasn't just her who seemed at peace, it was as if her tilawah radiated tranquility to everyone around her. It became even more noticeable during challenging times, whether it was financial struggles, family issue, or health concern. Her recitation had this almost magical ability to shift the mood in our home. Listening to her voice as she chanted the verses, there was a kind of peace that flowed through the house, like waves shooting restless shores.
Wow, that's really moving. It sounds like her tilawah wasn't just a personal act of worship, but something that impacted the entire family.
Exactly. It became a source of strength for us, even if I didn't fully recognize it at the time. Later, when I started learning about Islamic tradition, I realized how integral tilawah is to our faith. It's not merely about reading words on a page, it's about reflecting, connecting with Allah, and seeing guidance. But in our home, it also became part of our family rhythm, a tradition that grounded us no matter what life threw at us. I remember one particularly difficult period in our lives. My father was facing some financial difficult with his business, and there was a lot of tension in the air. Despite all that, my mother never missed her morning tilawah. And I distinctly recall one evening when I overheard her quietly reciting Surah Yusuf. That particular chapter tells the story of the Prophet Yusuf, who faced immense trials but remained steadfast and was ultimately rewarded for the passion and trust in Allah. Hearing her recite those verses, I felt this deep sense of reassurance, as if the message of hope and perseverance was meant for all of us. It was a turning point for me, where I began to see tilawah as more than just a routine or obligation.
That's incredible. It is amazing how traditions like this can carry so much meaning, not just for individuals, but for the entire community or family.
Well, that's more or less my experience with this. So, well, how about you, Irsa?
Okay. Alright, now my turn. And as I grow older, I start to explore tilawah for myself. At first, it was sporadic, so something I did during Ramadan or when I felt I needed comfort. But the more I engaged with the Quran, the more I understood why it was such an essential part of my mother's life too. It wasn't just about fulfilling a religious duty, it was about creating a sacred space in her day, a moment where she could pause and reconnect with Allah regardless of how chaotic life was. When I began reciting the Quran myself, I discovered that it wasn't just the act of reading that was impactful, but also process of understanding and reflecting on its meaning. Certain verses seemed to speak directly to me, offering guidance and clarity in ways I didn't expect. For example, there is a verse in Quran Surah Ar-Rod that says, "Verily, in the remembrance of Allah do hers find rest." I found that to be profoundly true in my own life. There is something so grounding about starting the day with tilawah. It sets the tone for everything that follows, reminding me of what truly matters and anchoring me in my faith.
Wow, that's amazing how the Quran has that ability to resonate with different people in different ways, depending on what they are going through.
That's so true. And what I find beautiful is how tilawah is not just a personal experience, it is also deeply communal. In Islam culture, reciting the Quran is the tradition that connects us to our roots, something that has been passed down through generations, linking us to the practices of our ancestors and the teachings of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. And I think about my mother's learning it from her parents and them learning it from this by continuing this tradition. We are not just honoring our faith but also preserving our cultural heritage that binds us together. Another thing I've come to appreciate is how tilawah is integrated into so many aspects of Islamic life. It is present during major life events like weddings, funerals, and even the quiet moments of daily prayer. I have attended gatherings where people collectively recite the Quran, each voice contributing to a symphony of devotion. It's a powerful reminder of the universality of our faith. No matter where you go in the world, you'll find Muslims engaged in the same tradition, reciting the same verse and drawing strength from the same sources.
Wow, that's such a beautiful perspective, Irsa. It's like tilawah is more than just a tradition. It's a bridge that connects us to Allah, to our history, and to each other.
Exactly, and that's why I've made an effort to incorporate tilawah more consistently into my own life. It's not always easy, especially with the distraction of modern life. Yeah, but every time I sit down with the Quran, I'm reminded of why it matters. It's a moment of stillness in busy words, a chance to step back and realign myself with my purpose. One of the most profound realization I've had is that tilawah isn't just about reciting words. It's about living the message. The Quran isn't meant to stay on the page. It's meant to shape our actions, our character, and our interaction with others. That's something I've tried to carry with me, whether it is in how I treat my family, how I approach challenges, or how I contribute to my community. And in a way, it all comes back to that image of my mother sitting in the early morning tide, reciting the Quran with such peace and purpose. Her example has stayed with me, reminding me of the power of traditions, not just as a ritual but as a way of a life. Your yours okay, always lanjut. And then your story is truly inspiring, Satria. It is a testament to how traditions like Tilawah can have a lasting impact, shaping not only our spiritual journey but also the way we navigate the world.
Thank you so much, Risat. Your story is very inspiring me too. It's like sharing this with you has been a reminder of how much I owe to my mother and the tradition she upheld. It's a legacy I hope to continue not just for myself but for future generations. Because as its core, Tilawah is about connection to Allah, to our heritage, and to the deeper truths that guide us through life.
Oh, Satya, I was thinking, since we are exploring Islamic literature and its traditions, wouldn't it be fascinating to connect it with Asian literature as a broader context?
Well, that's a great idea, Irsa. As a literature is a treasure, a trove of stories, philosophies, and cultural heritage. And what's interesting is how Islamic literature has deeply intertwined with the literary tradition of Asia, particularly in regions like Persia, India, and Southeast Asia.
Exactly. Let's take Persian literature as an example. It's both Asian and Islamic in essence. Think about Rumi or Hafiz. Their poetry resonates with spirituality, and their works are timeless.
That's true. In fact, Rumi's poetry often reflects the mystical tradition of Sufism, which blend Islamic theology with universal themes of love and longing. It's no surprise that his works are celebrated not just in Islamic culture but globally.
And what about India? During the Mughal Empire, the blending of Islamic and Indian tradition produced extraordinary works like Baburnama and Akbarnama. These aren't just historical texts but also examples of how Islamic literature flourished in Asia by adapting local language and storytelling traditions.
Well, absolutely, and we can forget Southeast Asia, especially countries like Indonesia and Malaysia. Islamic literature in this region has a unique character, deeply rooted in oral tradition. For instance, hikayat and syair,
Mm.
forms of traditional Malay literature, often incorporate Islamic teaching in their narratives.
That's such a good point. And the hikayat, reminds me of how storytelling plays a crucial role in preserving both cultural and religious knowledge, which is something we touched on earlier with oral narrative in Islamic literature.
Exactly. I think what makes Asian literature so remarkable is its diversity. It's a reflection of how the vastness of the regions is different cultures and how Islam interacts with these traditions. From Persian epics like Sahame to Indonesian bark poetry like the Serat Sentini, the spectrum is truly incredible.
And even today, we see modern writers like Alif Shafak and Khaled Hosseini drawing from Asian and Islamic tradition in their novels. It's proof that the literary legacy of Asia, deeply influenced by Islamic thought, continues to inspire readers worldwide.
That's right, Gershad. And perhaps this is the beauty of Asian literature. It's not just a historical artifact, but a living, breathing tradition that revolves while staying reconnected to its roots.
Beautifully said. So, to our listeners, if you're intrigued by the interplay between Islamic and Asian literature, let us know your thoughts. We love to hear which books or tradition have inspired you the most.
We hope this special episode, has given you a glimpse into the profound and timeless world of Islamic literature, and also a little spoiler about Asian literature.
And we're just getting started. Stay tuned for more episodes where we'll explore other fascinating topics. And until next time, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.